Okay, we're looking at, in Perek Ches, we're looking at all of the inyanim of learning Shalom Lishmah. So we're up to Sif Tesvav in Perek Ches. And here the Gra brings up a diuk, a kasha. I don't know if it's such a strong kasha, but at least it's a diuk. Macha Amru, it says in Pirkei Avos, this is the very beginning of Pirkei Avos, Al tiyu kavadim hamishamshin es Harav al manas lekabel pras. Do not be like servants or slaves who serve their master with the intention of getting reward. Ella havu kavadim hamishamshin es Harav shelo al manas lekabel pras. You should be like slaves who serve the master, not on the condition. No, it doesn't say almanas shelo lekabel. Almanas shelo lekabel pras means I'm serving on the condition that I don't get reward. That you're not mechuyev to. You're not mechuyev to b'dafka serve, so you shouldn't get reward. But at least that shouldn't be your motive. So the simple idea, right? The Mishnah is making a basic idea that you don't serve. I mean, of course, we serve. If you serve Hashem to get reward, that's Shalom Lishma. But ideally, you try to be an Eved who serves the master without the intention of getting reward, and that is the meaning of Lishma. Right? So don't be like an Eved who serves the master to get reward, but be like an Eved who serves the master without the intention of getting reward. So here he says the following: L'chayre tamua. No, it's hard to hear. I don't think this is such a powerful kasha. He says l'chayre, it's very shver. Why is it shver? The betchila amar lashon ashara. It starts off with a lashon of prohibition. Do not be an eved who is mishamesh al manas lekabel pras. That implies, in other words, it's wrong. Do not be that person. V'achar kach amar lashon eitza. But then the second statement is not as powerful as the first statement. The first statement says, you shall not be an Eved. Al manas lekabel pras. But the second statement says, it's a good idea to be an Eved who is serving his master not to get reward. So he says, there's a little bit of a stira because the reisha is mashma that it's improper. And the seifa is mashma, it's not improper, but it's better to be the other way. Right? So l'chayr, there's a stira. Now, again, I don't really hear it so much, but at a minimum you could argue that it's repetitive. That much it is true. Why do you have to say the positive and the negative? Don't be an eved al manas lekabel pras. Be an eved shalai al manas lekabel pras. So here's what the Gra says. So the Gra is going to be mechadesh that the reisha and the seifa are talking about two different things, and that's why you need both. Ha'inyan, dishleisha mine maisim heim. Now here he says there are three types of maisim that a person can have. Aleph, halomed bishvil peniyas. A person might learn Torah for an ulterior motive, like kavod. Ekra b'chdei shekra uni rabbi. I'm learning so they'll call me a rabbi. Whom ibnei kavod v'yosher. Though b'zman hazeh, I wouldn't call learning is for osher. That doesn't happen that much, but whatever it would be. But you're doing Torah for osher v'kavod. That's one reason. Beis shalomed b'shvil boro sheyimtza chen b'einav yitin lo sechar tov v'yaylam haba. Now, this is also a Shalom Lishma, but it's a very different Shalom Lishma. I'm learning to serve Hashem, to bring Hashem nachas, that I should find favor in God's eyes, so I should be zeicha to Eilam Haba. Now, you could say on one level, well, same thing. You're learning for Eisher, you're learning for Eilam Haba. L'chayra, it's not just for the sake of God. But there is a big difference, because when you learn for Eisher v'kavod, you're not really learning for Hashem at all. When you learn the second way, I'm learning to serve Hashem. so that Hashem will give me his sechar. Now then there's the third, which is the highest level. Hu rak toiv b'yiras Hashem. You're only doing it out of reverence to God. Kesher tzivanu lishma v'lasais, as he commanded us to do and to learn. V'lo l'shum peniya klal. There is no motivation other than avodas Hashem. Now, let me just remind you that in the preceding siman, Yud Dalet, see here in Tesvav, again, these are taken from different places. They weren't written by the Gra one after the other. In Yud Dalet, he says there are 4 categories in Lishmah. In Tesvav, there are 3 categories. Now, if you compare the 4 that are listed in Yud Dalet, you'll see that 3 of them are the same, meaning 3 in Yud Dalet are 3 in Tesvav, but in Yud Dalet he added something. The first one, go back to Yud Dalet if you have the Sefer. And the first one is Hashem Yisparach Yitein Lai Chayim. Hashem should give me life. Now, even though that mentioned life, but that does correspond in the next sif, that you're learning to find favor in Hashem's eyes, that he should give you schar in olam haba. So I would suggest, although the lashon may be a little daichak, that Aleph in Sif Yudaled, Yitin Lo Chayim, and Beis, Yitin Lo Sechar Bi Olam Haba, are really kind of one, although different manifestations, meaning I'm learning so that Hashem will be pleased with me and give me a benefit. That benefit might be Chayim in this world, or that benefit might be Chayim in Olam Haba. Now the next one in Yudaled is, I should have Gedula. That corresponds in the next one to Osher v'Kavod. I want Osher v'Kavod. Now the third one, Lihisyoyer, we had a little difficulty differentiating between what is the difference between wanting Gedula, wanting greatness, and Lihisyoyer, Gaiva. They seem to be almost the same, but I think the difference would be that one is Gedula, I want greatness, but it's not because I want to be better than you. I just want greatness because I want the greatness. It makes me feel good. Lihisyoyer is adding a little bit more. I want to be better than you. I want to be better than you. So really, Beis and Gimel, we can both call your learning for kavod. He subdivides it. There's the kavod that says, I want to be great, and there's the kavod that says, I want to be better than you. Okay, but both of them are for kavod. Now, the fourth is the worst of all. That's lekantir. Now, lekantir doesn't just mean I want to be better than you. That's lehisyoyer. Lekantir means I want to cut you down. I want to shame you. I want to be mavazi you. Right? That's a madrega of Lishmah that is very, very gefährlich. So in Sif Yudalid, therefore, we have, out of the 4, you could really break them down into 2. Aleph is I learn to find nachas in Hashem's eyes, so he should give me life. And that corresponds in what he says in Tesvav, I want Olam Haba. Beis, Gimel, not Dalet, Beis and Gimel are for Osher v'Chavod. Okay? Dalet, Lekanter, is really a separate category that's not even picked up in Tesvav, because that's Mamish and Avera. Lekanter is Mamish and Avera to learn that way. Okay. So now in Tesvav, he says there are 3 in Yanim. 2 of them are Shalo Lishma, right? One is for Kavod, Osher v'Kavod. The other is for Olam Haba, right? So they correspond to 3, right? The 2 correspond to the 3. Now, the third one is Lishma. That wasn't picked up in the previous Sif, because the previous Sif was talking about low Lishmas. This adds the idea of Lishma. So, based on this, listen to how he emphasizes the Mishnah. He says the following. V'lazeh amar techila lashon azhara ushalila. We start off with almost a prohibition. Do not be a person who learns almanas lekabel pras, meaning do not learn for oisher v'chavait. Do not learn for oisher v'chavait, even though lemaisa If you have to, we do say on that, mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma, but you really try to move away from that. However, the second statement of the Mishnah is telling you that you should try to be legamri lishma and not even learn to find nachas ruach. In other words, this is the stira. Remember, the Gra posits a stira, although I have to say I don't find the stira mamish compelling. That is, the reisha is mashma that there's something wrong in the shelo lishma. The seifa is mashma, it's not so wrong, but it's better to try for something higher. So says the Gra, this is gufa the yishuv. When the reisha says there's something wrong in the shelo lishma, that's for the yishuv v'chavod. When the seifa says there's nothing wrong, but you just try for something higher, that's referring to the person who's learning l'shem Hashem, so Hashem should give him olam haba. He says that is not really a sin at all. That is perfectly okay, except one should strive to reach the highest level of Lagamri L'Shem Shemayim. And that is exactly what the Gra said in Sif Yudalit, where Hitaka says that when you learn that Hashem should give you a reward, that's not so bad. And that's Kraiva L'Kedusha. And that's mamash what he says in Tesvav, and that's what the Seifa is saying. The Seifa is saying, try to be higher. But that's like a trying to be higher, but there's nothing really wrong with serving Hashem today that Hashem should give you reward. Because you're still doing it also Vaidas Hashem. I'm doing it to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? That is the yishuv that he brings. And therefore, one should be mishtadel to come to the madrega that you learn without a peniya bichlal. So this was said where? Okay. Yeah, all right. So this is his discussion of Shelo Lishma. So now he goes on to a new inyan. He says in Tesayin, Shleisha Anoshim Began Eden. There are 3 punishments that a person can suffer even in Gan Eden. Now this is very interesting. This does not mean Gehenna. Gehenna is what you go through before you go to Gan Eden. But even Gan Eden is Olam Haba. In the reward of Olam Haba, there are Tzadim of Einshim, which is a little scary in a way. Because, Gehenna has a time duration, right? The maximum of a person in Gehenna is 12 months, unless, they're very unusually vicious. That's, in fact, even most Rishayim do not spend 12 months in Gehenna. That's why we say Kaddish for a parent only for 11 months, because Kaddish is to keep a parent out of Gehenna, and we're not machzik a parent, God forbid, to be a Rosh Gomer that needs Kaddish for 12 months. It's actually brought down, by the way, that if Chas v'Shalom one held that one's parent was a Rosh Gomer, at least B'tzina, they should go to a minyan that they don't recognize him. He should say Kaddish for 12 months. There is that kind of minyan, because what? I'm going to deprive my parent of a zechus of Kaddish because I make an unrealistic assumption. If the Metzias is the Metzias, you say Kaddish. You say Kaddish for 12 months. So the Chayra Gehenim has a time limitation. But Gan Eden, which is Olam Haba, is forever. So if we talk about an Einesh, I guess that's my question. If we talk about an Einesh in Gan Eden, is that the same thing as a perpetual Einesh that lasts as long as the reward lasts? But you'll see, as we go through it, you'll see what we mean by a punishment. It's a different type of punishment. But it could be that can take away a lot of the geschmack, a lot of the tainug of Gan Eden. So, number 1, and this is where Shelo Lishma comes up again. Mi shalomed al manas lekabel pras. A person learns for ulterior motives. I learn Torah Shelo Lishma. So, of course, do I get schar in Gan Eden? I get schar in Gan Eden. Of course. But the schar is a little bit tainted. Yesh lo chuppah beGan Eden. I have a chuppah, a canopy, my house in Gan Eden, my special Again, the reason why we use the word chuppah is because it's like you're married to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have my chuppah in Gan Eden. Gewaldig. But what's the problem? Hu nichve mechupasei shel chaveru. There's an expression that each person is going to be burnt from the chuppah of the other person who's greater than him. Meaning, there's a lot of chuppahs. Everybody has a chuppah in Gan Eden. But if I learn Shelo Lishma, and my chaver learned Lishma, I'm going to be burnt from his chuppah, meaning I'm going to feel a certain amount of pain. So it's not clear to me exactly what form this is going to be. You're going to be in Gan Eden. You're going to have a chuppah. You're going to feel a gewaldige devekus to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But at the same time, there's going to be a pain of what you could have achieved, what you could have achieved had you learned Lishma. That's what it means, you're burnt. You're burnt, mechupa shel chaverai. It's almost like a jealousy. Now again, let me explain this. Obviously, for all of us, no matter who we are, there are going to be people great. I mean, there's going to be Moshe Rabbeinu has a chuppah in Gan Eden, right? So, but the pshat is like this. If you learned Lishma and if you served Hashem to the best of your ability, you're not going to feel any chisaron. So yeah, you might be aware of how great other people might be, but since you did exactly what you were supposed to do, you're not going to feel any type of emptiness. You're not going to feel any type of void. You're not going to feel any type of chisaron. But lehepech, if the pshat is, I learned Sholei Lishma when I could have learned Lishma, so I'm going to have a chuppah. But I'm going to be margish the chisaron in what I could have had. And that's a painful thing. It's like I have $1 million. I mean, to use in Olam Hazeh Mashal. But had I worked a little harder, had I spent another hour, whatever it is, I could have had $100 million. I have $1 million, Baruch Hashem, but I'm going to have a certain tsar. Why couldn't I have $100 million? Right? So that's called nichve. That's what it means. Each person is burnt. Mechupa shel chaverei. That's if it's shelo lishma. Now, then the second category, it's hard to know what that is. Hasheni shel lamad almanashi kari Rebbe. So it's hard to understand because the problem is there's, each sif is using different terminology and it's not necessarily picking up all the categories. Here, category 1 just says almanas lekabel pras. What does that mean? Every paniya is almanas lekabel pras. So the first is almanas lekabel pras. The second one is almanas sheyikra Rebbe. So what's the first one? Money. So maybe it's money. Maybe it just means I wanted to get a good position. So what about the person who learns for the kavod of being a Rebbe? B'shvil kavod. So here it's a little different, interestingly enough. Misbaye sham me'atzmai. This is very, very interesting. And so it's hard to understand the svaras here. He says, in both, there's going to be a busha. You're going to have a sense of what you could have accomplished. But in the first category, your busha will be because you'll see what other people got and you could have got, and that's going to hurt you. The second is you're not even going to see what other people get, but you're going to feel a sense of busha mitzad atzmai. Again, I'm not sure I fully understand the svaras for this. Almanas lekabel pras am nichve michupasei shel chaverei. Almanas sheyikra Rebbe misbayesh sham meyatzmei. So that's like a mida keneged mida, meaning I learn so I should be glorified. So the mida keneged mida is I will learn, I will be in Gan Eden, but I'll still feel a sense of busha. Again, it kind of bothers. I mean, I don't know. Is this forever? Is this 24/7? Meaning maybe an hour a day you feel better? I mean, is it? Because then you have to wonder, how great is Olam Haba if I got to go through all of these feelings all the time? I mean, we assume Olam Haba is not Gehenna. This is Olam Haba already. Gan Eden is Olam Haba. So I don't know. So one possibility is that this is not forever. This also has a duration. The other possibility is it's not the whole time, meaning there may be a zaman within the day where you have a certain hargasha, but it may not be, all the time. I don't know. He's not masber this. Now the third category is mi shelomed lakanter, right? That's the worst of all, where I learn not just to get covered, but I learn to cut you down. Now it's interesting. It was mashma from the Gra before that if you learn lakanter, you don't get any reward at all. Here it's interesting. I mean, here it's mashma that even lakanter, you get the reward of Torah learning in Olam Haba, but the punishment along with it is worse, and that is yizbazeh mi'acherim sham. The others that were there will shame you. So it's interesting. That's also hard to understand. In the first category, he says, "Am nichve michupase shel chaveira." Now that simply means I'm aware of their greatness, and I am ashamed or frustrated that I could have had that greatness and not. So what is this third category? Lakanter, that means they actually actively insult you, they mock you. What Avraham Avinu is going to make fun of you. He says, oh, you're a guy. I mean, that's hard to understand too. I mean, had I just read the sentence, Yisbaza mi'acherim, and not read the beginning, I would have interpreted that also to mean that you'll have a sense of the madregos of the other people and you'll feel ashamed. But l'chayra, that can't be what this means, because that's the first case of nichve michupasa shel chaveira. So if nichve michupasa shel chaveira means I'm aware of these other madregos and I'm burnt by them, so what is yizbaze mi'acherim? If not, they will actively be mocking me. It's schwer to hear it. It's schwer to imagine the idea of being mocked. Mocked by whom? Mocked by everybody? Mocked by everybody who was not Lakanter? That's a big population. Hopefully it's a big population. I mean, it doesn't say only the Gedolim. But it's almost like a sense that you will be taunted. You don't belong here. This is very, very frightening, because, this is Olam Haba. This is supposed to be like the best of the best of the best of the best. Right? 1 second of Olam Haba is better than all of the Hana of Olam Hazeh. And yet there are Einshim in Gan Eden. Now it could be, again, this is part of a deeper thing, and indeed the Gra will discuss it in Perek Tes, that maybe Gan Eden is not the same. I've been using it interchangeably. Gan Eden, Olam Haba, it's where your neshama goes after you die. But it could be there's lower levels and higher levels, and it could be that even after Gehenna, you're in a lower level of Olam Haba, and then you go to a higher level. Gan Eden may refer to a lower level of Olam Haba. And B'dafke in Gan Eden, there are these Einshim, which are post-Gehenna purifications. And then you go to Olam Haba. So it could be once you're in Olam Haba, the Olam HaNitzchi, you're not going to have this problem. But there's a long way to go, meaning it's not a straight road. Even, for sure, it's not a straight road from death to Olam Haba, that's for sure. But it's not even a straight road from Gan Eden to Olam Haba. So actually, we'll see that in the next parak, and that might be the mafteach to understand this. That's why it's meduyak, that these are Einshim began Eden. Okay. But again, some of this, I think, we'll have a better understanding as we go on. Okay. So now Yud Zayin goes on to a different topic. Again, some of the topics are not necessarily a hamshacha. Hatzadikim gam ha'achila ushar inyonei haguf etzlam kaidesh sha'isem hakol l'shem shamayim. He says by tzadikim, the kayach of a tzadik is that it is not only his learning, his davening, his mitzvahs, that are serving Hashem. But even his eating, his drinking, going to sleep, all of the tzorchei haguf, since the reason that tzaddik is doing these things is in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so even the gashmias, even the physicality of the tzaddik become maisim of kedusha. Now the emes is, this is in the Rambam. The Rambam says in Hilchos Deis that a person shouldn't think, I only serve Hashem when I'm learning and davening and doing mitzvahs. But you're eating, you're drinking, you're walking, you're vacationing, you're exercising, you play basketball, whatever you're doing, if you have the kavanah that I'm doing it, to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the Gashmias itself becomes a mitzvah. Maybe not as one of the 613 mitzvahs, but it becomes Avodas Hashem. And the Rambam brings, this is the meaning of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Kol ma'asecha yiyu l'shem shamayim. All of your deeds, all of your maisim should be l'shem shamayim. So that means even the maisim of achila, shasiya, shina, whatever it would be. And he then says the source of Chazal's statement is a pasuk in Mishlei by Shelaima HaMelech that says, B'chol derachecha, in all of your ways, da'eyu, you shall know Hashem. You should know Hashem in all of your ways, derachecha, and that implies even the physicality, even the gashmias. The Ramchal writes in Mesilas Yesharim, where he goes through all the different madregas, and the highest madrega is Kedusha. Kedusha is the highest of the highest. He says when a person reaches the madrega of Kedusha, every glass of wine that goes down his throat is like nesachim. It's like the wine libations that are poured on the Mizbeach. Everything he eats is like a korban to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? This is the kayach of the tzaddik. So even though we're normally maybe not on that madrega, but we try, like people say before they eat on Shabbos, right? Some people say, l'chavod Shabbos Kodesh. L'chavod Shabbos Kodesh. Now, in some ways, you could say, oh, that's pretentious. Oh, you're only eating l'chavod Shabbos, meaning otherwise you would not have any cholad. I'm not going to eat cholad, I'm not going to eat chicken soup. Only l'kavod Shabbos. Mistama for most people, that's not emes. They would do it anyway. They like the food. But still, at least you're showing that this is where you would like to go. This is a madrega you would like to achieve. So even if you're not doing it yet, but expressing the ratzain to be on that madrega is also bringing you to that madrega on some level. So this is an important chiddush. In fact, the Maharal says, earlier than the Gra, that this is the meaning of the Gemara in Masechah Shabbos that says many inyanim of Matan Torah are connected to the number 3. Just like Pesach, everything about Pesach is 4. There are 4 sons and 4 kashas and 4 lishainis of Geula, all of those different things. So many inyanim of Matan Torah are connected to the number 3. It says, Hashem gave us, this is Gemara in Shabbos, Hashem gave us a 3-fold Torah, Nevi'im, Kesuvim, to a 3-fold nation, Kaihanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, in the 3rd month, which is Sivan, Nisan, from Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, after 3 days of preparation, the Shleisha Shemei Hagbala. So the Gemara says, Darish Shahu Galila, a man from Galil, darshaned in front of Rav Yossi, Barich Rachamana, Diyav Lana, Raisa Talisai, Liam Talisai, Biyarcha Talisai, etc. So the Gemara doesn't explain, though, what is the shaychus? What is the great connection of Matan Torah to 3? Right, why 3? So the getter is like this. The getter is because 3 symbolically in Kabbalah represents the notion of the integration of opposite forces. For example, the 3 Spheros, the first of the three lower spheros. We have Chesed, which is loving kindness, to the right. We have Gevura, which is strength and judgment, to the left. And Chesed and Gevura pull in opposite ways, but then they're combined and they're harmonized through the midah that is called Tiferes, beauty. Thus, Avram, who represents Chesed to an extreme, even though Chesed is wonderful, produces a Yishmael. There's a certain psilas in too much Chesed, like you let your kids eat candy all the time. And Yitzchak, who represents inner strength and Gevura, produces an Esav. It's only when you're mechaber, you're mosaic, you mix together Chesed and Gevura, that you get Tiferes, which is beauty. Beauty is a combination of Chesed and Gevura, and then you get a Klal Yisrael, every single child of Yaakov Avinu, although we had our problems too, but with Mechiras Yosef, but every single child is Nichlal in Kedushas Yisrael. So the Maral says this is visualized like a triangle. Imagine a triangle. So the base of the triangle has 2 points moving in opposite directions. The base. Point here, there's a line. The 2 points have no connection to each other. But you then draw diagonals from the 2 points, and they meet at the apex of the triangle, the top of the triangle. So the apex of the triangle is integrating, combining, synthesizing the two opposite forces. That's why 3 is always the lashon of being mechaber opposites, to mix them in a proper way. So says the Maral, the Torah is connected to 3 because the human being is comprised of a guf and a neshama. And the desires of the guf are animalistic desires, to eat, to drink, to sleep, to be lazy, whatever it is. The neshama has yearnings to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Without a Torah, the guf and the neshama would live in contradiction. That's why in other religions, if you're a priest or whatever it is, you have to be peiresh from the world. Now, granted, they don't really do it, but the theory is, don't get married, don't live in poverty, because Eilam Hazeh is a stira to Ruchnias. It's either this or that. The Torah was Machadesh, that even through the Gashmias, you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Torah is Tiferes because it takes opposites, the Guf and the Neshama. And it shows you how you bring them together. And that's a Pella, right? Bringing together the Guf and the Neshama, that even the Achila Shasiya becomes Avaidas Hashem. That is why, indeed, the Torah is called Tiferes. Right? The Maral's big sefer, the Maral wrote many, many Svarim, but his 3 biggest Svarim, he never finished the series. It was based on the pasuk L'cha Hashem Agdula v'Agvura v'Tiferes v'Netzach v'Ahayid ki chol b'Shamayim v'Haaretz. Right, we say this when the Torah comes out on Shabbos, even some say even Monday and Thursday. So the Maral wanted to write a sefer on each of the spheres. Now he didn't do it on all of them, but he wrote Gevuros Hashem on Yetzias Mitzrayim. He wrote Tiferes Yisrael on Matan Torah. And he wrote Netzach Yisrael. Netzach is the eternity of Yisrael on Golos and Geula and Mashiach. Which means he didn't complete all the spheres. It is said he wanted to write, or maybe he did write, we don't have it, Sefer HaGedula on Shabbos. That would have been, Chesed would have been on Shabbos. And the other Chagim would have been in the other ones. But the Torah is called Tiferes Yisrael. Why is it called Tiferes? Because Tiferes is the sphera of synthesis and balance and harmony, and that's what the Torah is. So that's what the Gra, going back to the Gra, that is what the Gra is saying as well, that the tzaddikim, even the inyanim of achila, are considered to be kaddish because it's all l'shem shamayim. But then he says the other way around, aval yesh b'nei adam shegam tayrasam u'maaseyim atayvim einam elo lispoyer. So with the tzaddikim, even the animalistic activities are kedusha. But then he says there are people that even the ruchnius is not kaddish, that even their learning and even their mitzvahs are only done for glory. So again, I have to see one of the problems in learning a sefer like Evan Shelaima is that sometimes the paragraphs actually contradict each other. Now you may wonder, well, you said something in Tesvav, how can you contradict it in Tesayin? The answer is, this doesn't answer this to you, but you have to understand that given the fact that this is not, the Gra did not write this sefer, this is a likud of teachings that are taken from many, many different places. So one sif is what the Gra said here, another sif is what the Gra said somewhere else. They're very far apart. So at least we don't have this inconsistency, from one sentence to the other sentence. Okay, but that's still not a teretz. L'maisa, it's not a teretz, because you still have a little bit of a contradiction. Like, what does he say here? All I'm saying, I'm just trying to make it psychologically easier to learn, because otherwise, if you had the sense that the Gra wrote the Sefer in this order, you'd have, you'd go crazy because he said this, then he says this. But the answer is these are different things from different places. But Einochinami, sometimes the Gra wrote it differently, or said it differently. So here in Sif Yud Zayin, look at the lesson here. There are B'nai Adam, Shegam Tayrasam U'Maaseyim Atayvim. Even their Torah learning and their good deeds, Einam Ela Lehispire, are only doing it for glory. Now this is not L'Kandra, this is L'Kavod. V'heim, and these people are B'nai Gehenim. They will go to Gehenim. Misitra de Erev Rav. The word sitra is Aramaic, like mitzad, from the side of the Erev Rav. Now, okay, there's a lot of things to unpack here. Again, just to chazer what we just said, in Seif Yud Dalet, the Gra did condemn learning l'shem kavod. He did say that. But he did say, if you need that, if it's not the contrary, if you need that to motivate you, because otherwise you wouldn't learn, you should learn because we do consider it to be mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. And we just read that you'll be in Gan Eden for that. Right? You'll be in Gan Eden, except you'll be nichve. Either you'll be mispayesh me'atzmai, mispayesh me'acherim, you'll be nichve michupasei shel chaveri. So the chayra, when he says b'nei Gehenim, he doesn't mean you're not going to get Olam Haba for that learning. You will get Olam Haba for that learning, but you'll go through a Gehenim. Now, either that's the Gehenim before Olam Haba, or maybe that's a reference to the Einesh in Gan Eden that could be described as a shtickle Gehenim in Gan Eden. In other words, he can't mean legamri, you just go to Gehenim for that, because that would contradict the mitoch shelo lishma bal lishma. But he means that there'll be a Gehenim for that at the same time. Now, the Sitra de Erev Rav, again, we looked at this also. This is really discussed later on, more be'arichas. The Gra has a kind of a different take on Erev Rav a little bit. The Erev Rav becomes a much bigger thing, a much bigger deal than we might have thought it is. Erev Rav, just to remind people, is in the Chumash itself. And that just means the big mixture of people. And it mentions that when we left Mitzrayim, there were many, 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 many Egyptians who saw all the miracles and they wanted to join us. And they joined Am Yisrael when they left Mitzrayim. And they're called the Erev Rav. Did they convert? Did they become Jewish? Did they not become Jewish? You don't know Bichlal. How big was the Erev Rav? The Torah doesn't say. But in Chazal, they say a huge, huge number. Some say it was equal to the Jews who left Mitzrayim. Some say it was double the Jews who left Mitzrayim. You're dealing with a huge number of people, the Erev Rav. Now, and according to Chazal in many, many places, a lot of the sins of the Dor HaMidbar were caused by the Erev Rav. Even the Erev Rav, caused us to be nichshel, right? So we always blame the Erev Rav for all of our problems in the Midbar. Now, what happened to the Erev Rav? Meaning, the Erev Rav continued to be relevant to the history of the Jewish people. So the pashtus is, okay, there was an Erev Rav, but listen, the whole generation of the desert died, except for Yoshua, Caleb, etc. So the Erev Rav died out in the Midbar. So our assumption would normally be, by the time we got to Eretz Yisrael, there's no Erev Rav anymore. They kind of also died. So in addition to the 600,000 men, there, 5 million Erev Rav died in the Midbar. So the standard understanding is that, Erev Rav was a historical problem that's no longer Naigeya Lemaisa. We don't talk about Erev Rav anymore. We have other problems. But the Gra al Pi the Zayar, it's really based on the Zayar, makes the Erev Rav into a much, much, much bigger thing. And that is the idea that either the Erev Rav survived physically and assimilated into Am Yisrael, or they created a spiritual tumah that we absorbed. It's always not clear, because the Gra talks about the fact that within the Jewish people, much of the evil that exists is Erev Rav. But it's a little ambiguous. If you just ask yourself practically, what does that mean? Is he saying that the Rishonim are actually descended from the Erev Rav? In other words, they survived? Or does he mean in a spiritual sense we absorbed? That's a little ambiguous. That the Gra never says beferish. But the Gra does say, again, it's based on the Zohar, that the Erev Rav is the sheirish of much of the richness. Now here, I want to look quickly at something we had looked at before, but just to remind you. In Perek Yud Aleph, there is actually a famous passage. This is Perek Yud Aleph, Sif Ches. Chamisha mine Erev Rav. Right, Perek Yud Aleph, Sif Ches. Chamisha mine Erev Rav, yesh b'Yisrael. There are 5 types of Erev Rav that exist in Am Yisrael. Now again, as I say, does he mean they're descended from the Erev Rav, or does it mean it was a tumah that we got from the Erev Rav? But it's like a virus that keeps on infecting us. What are the 5? Aleph, Balei Machlokes V'Lashon Hara. That counts as 1. People who are always trying to make machlokes between people, and they often do it by Lashon Hara. Hey, you know what this guy did, etc. Number 2, Balei Taiva. People that have taivas for either money or for arayos. Now this doesn't mean every person that has a taiva is Erev Rav, but if you're Balei Taiva, meaning you're totally meshuka in the taivas. Gimel, Hatzivuim. Tzivuim are hypocrites, people who give the appearance of being tzaddikim, who are fakers. That's called tzivuim. Ein teichem kabaram. Their inside is not the same as their outside, you see? So it's interesting. A stam honest Rasha is not a hypocrite. That's not Erev Rav. A Mechalel Shabbos, whatever it is. But tzivuim is a hypocrite. Number 4, right for machar kavod. A person that is right for kavod, meaning even if he's doing mitzvahs, he's right for kavod. And hey is right for him achar mammon. Okay, so the 5, Balei Machlokes, Balei Taiva, hypocrites, kavod mammon. Now, again, as I say, the Gra doesn't stop say there are 5 types of Rishoyim in the world. I mean, there are many more types of Rishoyim. He ties this very specifically to the Kayach of the Erev Rav. So now, if you flip back to Perek Ches, you understand, at least the Lashon exactly, he says, people who are learning only for Kavod are getting their spiritual Kayach from the Erev Rav. Because again, that ties in. Because one of the 5 categories of Erev Rav is people who do things for Kavod. I don't know. Again, I'm just having a little. Again, I just want to point out that the Gra, again, based on the Zohar, has made the Erev Rav a much, much, much bigger thing than Pshuto Shel Mikra would have indicated. In Pshuto Shel Mikra, they were there, they caused trouble, and they're gone. The Gra's point is, the Kayach of the Erev Rav is Nimshach into the Dores of Am Yisrael. Now, the truth is, this is contemporary political religious speech. Everybody's called Erev Rav, right? So, I mean, we use the term too much. Somebody feels, whatever it is, that Charedim should go into the army, says, or Erev Rav. But okay, Erev Rav, I mean, you could be chaylik with people. Doesn't mean they're Erev Rav. You know, that's more of a... It's a serious accusation to say Erev Rav. Okay, but be it as it may. But again, the Hechrech, the Gra is not saying they don't get schar for this, because the Gra had said if you learn l'shem kavod, you still get schar, right? But it's still, your avodah comes from the Erev Rav. Now, but then he says, Kasha ma'ait, lilmaid tamid, b'cheshek l'shem shemayim. So now the Gra gives us a little concession. On one hand, when I learn l'shem kavod, I'm getting my energy from the Erev Rav. It's like I'm poisoning myself a little bit. On the other hand, I sometimes need the motivation of kavod. It's very, very hard to learn with geshmak, legamri l'shem shemayim. But then he says the following: Ach, tzarech lilmaid min harishayim halalu, shalaimdim b'shkeda rabba shelo l'shem shemayim. So here's what the Gra says. The Gra says, you have to learn from Rishayim. Right? These Rishayim who are learning l'shem kavod, they might be very big masmidim. They want to learn for the kavod. So you can learn from the Rishayim. If they could learn with such commitment, shelo l'shem shemayim, why can't I do the same thing? This is the meaning. David HaMelech says, Me oivai tachkimeni. Now, one translation is, make me wiser than my enemies. But the other translation is, make me wiser from my enemies. Let me learn from the Rishon. People say, I mean, again, it's a way not to use this mashal, but I remember when, it wasn't Hamas then, but around 20, 25 years ago, there were suicide bombings, shrekach things. It was really a pacha to go on a bus. It really was an awful, awful situation. These were people who blew themselves up. And I think Rav Shach said at the time that you have to learn from these Rishayim, that these Rishayim, in their perverted minds, they're meiser nefesh mamish for what they believe. Then we have to take on the Torah with ad mesiras nefesh mamish. You learn from a Meshugana, you learn from some guy, the sick person, he set himself on fire, you read about this, in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington. Just a guy in the Air Force. He just set himself on fire to protest Palestinian domination. I mean, the guy's crazy. The guy's sick. But afilu hachi, pshat is he felt so strongly that he was willing to die for his cause. So we have to also learn mesiras nefesh. For what we have to be meiser nefesh. Me'oivai tachkimeni. So the Gra says, learn from the Risham. Now it's interesting, to give you another example, which really doesn't fit the Erev Rav situation. During the years in Russia, or the old Soviet Union, where you weren't allowed to teach Torah, whatever it is, so the KGB, it's just amazing the resources they put in.
the KGB wanted to infiltrate every yeshiva that there was in Russia. So they would take a guy, and he'd learn in yeshiva for 20 years, so he could infiltrate. He would know exactly what they're talking about. So they invested. It was part of his training. Part of his training was he sat and finished Shas, whatever it is, and then he goes in. So it's the Gamri for Rishus. It's the Gamri to catch Jews and imprison Jews and whatever it is. But they invested years and years and years and years training, just like a spy would have to learn the language, right? Which is obvious, right? A spy who's going to a country has to know the language of that country. So they made him no Shas and Shulchan Aruch, whatever it is. So once again, the Gra says, you got to take Musar from Rishayim, that they're Meiser Nefesh to achieve their agenda. So you could say, okay, I shouldn't be lazier than them. This is what they said by Yaakov Avinu. This is the word by Yaakov Avinu. My Rosh Hashiva used to say it, Taka. If you remember, when Yaakov meets Esav after all those years, so Yaakov says, Im Lavan Garti. I lived with Lavan. So Garti are the letters of Taryag. Taryag says, Taryag mitzvah shamarti. I kept the mitzvah, and as he's telling Esav a little bit of a remiss, don't mess with me, I have zechuyas. V'lo lamadati, this is the finishing of the statement. Taryag mitzvahs shamarti, I kept the mitzvahs. V'lo lamadati mimaisav harayim. I didn't learn from Lavan's evil deeds. So it's a little schwer. People ask, is Yaakov boasting? Is Yaakov saying, I'm such a tzaddik, I didn't learn from Lavan's evil deeds? Shtickle boast. So my Rosh Hashiva, Reb Breitowitz, used to say that Yaakov is berating himself. Yaakov is giving himself musar. Yaakov is saying, even though I kept the mitzvahs, I didn't do it with the passion and geschmack of Lavan's Maisim Harayim. That Lavan did his Maisim Harayim with real enthusiasm and passion and excitement. And it's a teichacha to me that the way I did my mitzvahs was not on the madrega to the way he did his averos. Right? Lo lamadati. I should have learned mimaisav harayim, and that's what the Gaon is saying. That it's very hard to learn lishma, but look at these rishayim. Shelaimdim b'shkeda rabba. Right? The KGB. Shalom l'shem shamayim. Kach. Yilmad b'leivav shalem l'shem shamayim. So now he brings the pasuk. Interesting pshat here. B'zeh shekosov. This is a pasuk in Iyov. Malafnei mibehemais oretz. Malafnei. Hashem teaches him from the wild animals. Meaning you can learn things from the wild animals. Now, Lamaisa, there's a Gemara in Erevin that Taka says we look at animals, we learn modesty from a cat, etc. But the Gra has an interesting pshat here. He says the wild animal refers not to animals, it refers to Rishayim, who are like wild animals. We should learn from the wild animals how to be devoted to whatever our cause is. Perish min harishayim shedaimim b'maseihem lebehema, and learn to be devoted to your cause. They're devoted to all of the bad things they want to do, but they're going to stick with it. They're not going to give up. So you should not give up either. Okay. Okay, let's read a little bit more. The next one, Sifiyut Ches. K'sheyetzer hara mesis es adam lilmad l'shem hana, o rabbanis. When the Yetzer Hara is pushing you to learn for pleasure or kavod, rabbanis is kavod. Ve'ena yachol lamad kenegdai. Now, l'maisa, this is again a little bit of a contradiction. Before he said, learn anyway. But he says, before you learn anyway, do something else. There's a preliminary step when you feel you're learning l'shem kavod. Take a little break, and he says, Azai Yaiser Taiv Lilmaid Besifrei Musar Bi'Aisa Shah Ad Sheyelech Hayetzer Hara Mimenu v'yaz yilmait. That would be time. Now, again, I'm assuming he means a musar break. I don't think he means don't learn, just learn musar. But he means that try to be machazik yourself with learning in yanim of musar until, this is assuming, until the Yetzer Hara goes away. Again, just to remind you, in the Nefesh HaChaim of Chaim Volozhner also talks about learning musar, but he says keep it very limited, because he says that people who spend their whole day learning musar are missing the point, because the main point is to be Isaac in the Torah Hashem. But the musar can sometimes focus me on my lishma. Now, this is a little complicated. What musar do you learn? Are we talking about a specific sefer? Like what type of teaching will bring you back to lishma? Okay, maybe we'll talk about it next week. But this is what he says, that you try to keep away from the covered motivation by concentrating on the musar. Okay, maybe we'll stop here.